This will probably include some spoilers.
She's going through puberty.
Yeah.
Oh no, every parent's worst nightmare.
What you perceive is actually through the filter of whatever your goals may be.
We recently watched Inside Out 2 twice. And the second time, we actually took notes because we found the first watch of it so powerful, and we're like...
Yeah, I mean, it is a really deep movie.
I'm 12, right?
Yeah.
And you're 15. We're actually sisters, if you don't know. But a lot of the kids in our school are also around this age, and so is Riley. In the movie, Riley has just turning 13, and part of the plot is actually that she's going through puberty. Oh no, every parent's worst nightmare and everything like that. You know, and so giving our thoughts from that perspective as well.
So just to preface, this will probably include some spoilers, although I don't think it will ruin the movie, but I mean, that's probably up to other people to decide. So, but I think there's a lot of different themes that's touched on by the movie. One is, of course, puberty. Another big one is anxiety. Anxiety is one of the new emotions introduced. But I think the main theme we really want to cover in this conversation is the theme of identity, because that's kind of touched on. It's not really explicitly covered in the movie in the sense that they're directly addressing that.
I think it's the sense of self. That is a big part of the movie is Riley's sense of self, and I think that is her identity, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the first scenes in the movie is they introduce this part of the brain, which is the belief system. And so essentially that belief system forms Riley's sense of self.
Yeah.
I'm a winner.
And all those beliefs come together to make our Riley.
I'm a good person.
And so I think this was really interesting because this was not included in the first movie, so it's indicating, like, as part of growing up, you have to learn more about, like, who you are and develop a narrative around who you are as a person. It kind of implies that the sense of self is able to override emotions.
And I think it does do that on a short-term emotional impulse level. Like, part of my sense of self sometimes is that I'm healthy, right? And if I really want that cookie at the grocery store, then my sense of self comes in as like, no, Isla. You're not doing that today, right?
Yeah.
And, well, when you start growing older, you start to build that sense of self. I don't think when you're like 5 years old, you really have much of a sense of self. I think it's mainly those emotional impulses, right? But when you start building that, then you have something that can override those just like natural sort of animal impulses. You know what I mean?
Well, I do think that there's two things that sense of self does, which is one, like overriding emotions. But I think the sense of self also creates emotional responses. So in some cases, you know, if you have a sense of self of like, I'm healthy, then maybe it would create the emotional response of you see something healthy in the grocery store and you would have a positive reaction.
Right, that's true.
So it does create emotional responses as well. And I think that's, so Peterson actually talks about this.
Perception is not passive. There is no perception without action, ever. You're only sampling a small element of the space that's in front of you, and the element that you choose to sample is dependent on your aims and your goals, so it's value saturated.
He essentially is saying how your perception is a goal-oriented framework where your perception is shaped by your goals.
Yeah.
It's not that, like, oh, in your perception, you know, you have goals, but it's like what you perceive is actually through the filter of whatever your goals may be. Usually
you're not perceiving certain things, right? There's like one thing you're focused on. Like right now I'm more focused on talking to you than the bookshelf over there, right? I'm not really perceiving that bookshelf.
Right.
But all of that is through some kind of filter. So what is that filter? What does it filter out?
Yeah, and so it's kind of like the hierarchy of what you bring your attention to will be a direct reflection of what your goals are, even if you don't explicitly state those things as your goals.
Right.
But essentially, you have a sense of self that is basically your goals, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think that is, like, this is why we wanted to cover this topic in the first place, is because it's so important, because our sense of identity shapes our perception, which therefore will shape our actions. But I think that there's a kind of something in the movie that I have a little bit of trouble with, which is that it doesn't really seem like there's anything built in there that allows for free will, because essentially in the movie, the emotions choose which memories go into the belief system
Right.
that then build the sense of self.
It's weighing on her, so let's lighten the load. A one-way expressway to, we're not gonna think about that right now.